My son shoved a cup of tea in front of me, his voice a sickening mask of care. "This'll ease your pain, Ma." Ease my pain? Yesterday, I founded a life insurance policy. My name scrawled like a death warrant, his as the sole beneficiary, raking in millions when I'm gone. My own flesh and blood, plotting to sell my last breath for cold, hard cash. The betrayal cuts deeper than any knife, a raw, searing agony that rips through my heart. How dare he smile, offering me poison in a teacup, while scheming to bury me for profit. My chest burns with rage. My hands shake with the weight of a mother's love turned to ash. Honey, have you ever felt your soul shatter under a child's greed? I glared at that tea, its steam curling like his lies, and I vowed, I won't drink it. Never. Let me tell you what I did next. That tea sat untouched on my kitchen table, mocking me with its faint chamomile scent, while the weight of my son's betrayal sank into my bones. I live alone in this old house on the outskirts of Savannah, Georgia, where ancient oaks drape their moss over my front yard like mourning veils. The air here hums with cicadas at dusk, and the porch creaks under the memory of my late husband, Henry. He built this place 40 years ago, every nail driven with love, every board soaked in his sweat. His old rocking chair still sits by the window, its cushion worn thin from years of waiting for him to come home. He never did. But Tommy? My only boy? He left me too, 15 years ago, after Henry's funeral. No calls, no visits, just silence colder than a January night. Now, Tommy's back, strutting through my door like he owns the place, his boots tracking mud on my polished pine floors. "Ma, you shouldn't be out here all alone," he said yesterday, his eyes scanning the room, not my face, but the walls, the land beyond. He's got Henry's hazel eyes, but they're sharp now, calculating, like a fox eyeing a henhouse. This morning, he poured that tea with a smile too wide, calling me Ma, like he hadn't forgotten my birthday for a decade. I nodded, my arthritic fingers curled around a napkin, but my heart screamed. Something's wrong. "Thanks, son," I murmured, voice soft as Spanish moss. "I've learned to play the part of a frail old widow. But honey, don't be fooled. This house, this land, it's mine. And I'm watching him. Closely. Let me tell you what I found next." That tea sat there, cold now, its steam long gone, like the trust I once had for my son. I didn't touch it, honey. Not after what I found. The morning sun filtered through the oak trees outside my Savannah home, casting dappled shadows across the kitchen table. I was sorting through a pile of mail bills, seed catalogs, the usual when I saw it. A crisp white envelope, tucked under a flyer for tractor parts. My name, Margaret Elaine Dawson, typed neatly at the top. Inside, a life insurance policy, fresh as a pressed Sunday dress, with a payout of $2 million. Tommy's name glared at me from the bottom. Sole beneficiary. My heart didn't race. It froze. I've lived 76 years, raised a boy through scraped knees and broken promises. But this? This was a betrayal carved in ink. I sat back in Henry's old chair, its wood groaning under my weight, and stared at the paper. Tommy had been in my house 3 days, acting sweeter than pecan pie. But his eyes never lingered on mine. They roamed the walls, the 8 acres of land stretching beyond the porch, the timber-rich forest Henry and I swore to protect. Yesterday, he'd lingered by the window, muttering into his phone about market value and easy to move. I'd played the fool, nodding along, but my ears were sharp. "You look tired, Ma," he'd said, handing me that tea. "Why don't you rest?" "Rest?" "Honey, I've been resting my whole life for a fight like this." I slipped the policy back into its envelope and hid it behind the flour tin in the pantry, where Tommy wouldn't think to look. My hands, knotted with arthritis, were steady as I moved to the den. Tommy was out back, pretending to check the fence line. I knew better. He was scoping the property, measuring it in dollar signs. I opened the drawer of Henry's old desk, where I kept his things, his pipe, his seed journals, and a small cassette recorder, still working after all these years. I slipped in a fresh tape, pressed record, and tucked it inside a hollowed-out Bible on the bookshelf. If Tommy wanted to play games, I'd set the board. That evening, he came in, tracking mud again, his smile wide but brittle. "Fix that loose post for you, Ma," he said, sitting across from me at the supper table. "This place is a lot to handle alone." His voice was smooth, like the Savannah River at dusk, but I caught the edge in it. "You're sweet to worry," I replied, stirring my soup, my eyes on the steam instead of him. "Maybe I am getting too old for all this." He leaned forward, too eager. "I could help, Ma. Get things in order. You know, paperwork, property stuff." Paperwork. The word hung heavy, like the air before a storm. I excused myself to check the cornbread in the oven, but really I was listening. Tommy pulled out his phone, his voice low but not low enough. "Yeah, Carl, it's going smooth," he whispered, thinking I was out of earshot. "She's buying the frail act. I'll have her sign the deed soon. The insurance is just backup." My blood ran cold, but my face stayed calm as I slid the cornbread onto the counter. "Carl." I didn't know the name, but I'd find out. I returned to the table, smiling like a good Southern lady. "More soup, Tommy?" I asked, my voice sugar-sweet. He nodded, oblivious. But I saw a flicker of guilt in his eyes, gone as quick as it came. Later, when he stepped out to take a walk, I checked his jacket, left slung over the chair. Inside the pocket, a crumpled receipt from a Savannah lawyer's office, dated 2 days ago. The name Carl Dixon was scrawled on it, along with a phone number. I copied it onto a scrap of paper and slipped it into my apron. Back in the den, I retrieved the recorder, its red light blinking like a heartbeat. Tommy's voice was on there now, clear as day, plotting against me. I hid it back in the Bible, my hands steady as stone. He thought he was clever, but honey, I've been tending this land longer than he's been alive. I know how to spot a weed, and I know how to pull it. Here's what happened when I dug deeper. The weight of Tommy's betrayal settled into my chest, like a stone sinking in the Savannah River, heavy and cold, pulling me under. I sat alone in the attic, the air thick with dust and memories, the recorder tucked safely in my apron pocket after capturing his damning words. The oak trees outside swayed in the evening breeze, their shadows clawing at the window like ghosts begging to be let in. I wasn't looking for ghosts, though. I was looking for answers. My fingers, gnarled from years of tending roses, brushed against a wooden box in the corner, one I hadn't opened since Henry passed. Inside, I found a letter from Tommy, written in his messy teenage scrawl, dated 20 years ago, just after Henry's funeral. "Dear Ma," it began. "I'm sorry I ran. I couldn't stay and watch you hurt. I'll make you proud one day. Love, Tommy." I'd clung to that letter like a lifeline, believing my boy would come back whole. Now, those words burned, each one a lie that tore my heart open anew. I sank to the floor, the letter trembling in my hands, its edges worn from years of hope. I remembered Tommy at 10, his laughter echoing across the marsh as he and Henry cast lines for catfish, their shadows long in the Georgia sunset. I'd watch from the porch, stirring lemonade, thinking we'd always be that family. But when Henry died, Tommy vanished, leaving me to bury my husband alone, to mend the roof after storms, to limp through hip surgery with only Clara's hand to hold. I'd told myself he was grieving, lost in his own pain. But this? Plotting to sell my home, my life, for a payout? It wasn't grief. It was greed. The pain hit like a tidal wave, drowning me in the realization that the boy I raised was gone, replaced by a stranger who saw me as a check to cash. My chest ached, not from age but from a mother's love betrayed, a wound so deep it felt like my soul was bleeding out. "You okay, Ma?" Tommy's voice snapped me back, calling from downstairs. He must have come in from his so-called walk, his boots thudding on my pine floors. I wiped my eyes, quick and quiet, stuffing the letter back into the box. "Just dusting up here," I called back, my voice steady despite the storm inside. I couldn't let him see me break. Not now. Come down soon, Ma, he said, his tone too warm, too practiced. I made you some more tea. Tea again. The words slithered through me, reigniting my fury. I stood, brushing dust from my skirt, and looked at the attic window, where the moon hung low over the marsh. Henry used to say pain was a teacher, but this pain? It was a fire, burning away the last threads of hope I had for my son. I descended the creaky stairs, each step grounding me, reminding me who I was. Margaret Elaine Dawson, widow, gardener, survivor. Tommy was in the kitchen, pouring tea into my favorite china cup, the one with blue cornflowers Henry gave me for our 25th anniversary. Thought you'd like this, he said, sliding it toward me, his smile as false as a carnival barker's. I nodded, my face a mask of gratitude. You're too good to me, I said, letting my voice waver just enough to keep him fooled. But inside, my heart was a clenched fist. I'd poured my life into raising him, bandaged his cuts, cheered at his baseball games, prayed through his silences. And now he wanted to erase me for land and timber? No, honey. This old woman's roots run deeper than his schemes. I took the cup, pretending to sip, but poured it into a mason jar when he turned away to check his phone. The jar went into my apron pocket, next to the recorder, labeled, Suspicious, the 14th of April, in my careful script. I'd take it to Clara tomorrow. She'd know what to test for. Tommy thought he was playing me, but I was already steps ahead, my pain forging a resolve harder than Georgia Clay. I wasn't just a mother scorned. I was a woman ready to fight. And honey, you don't cross a woman who's learned to survive loss like mine. Here's how I started to turn the tables. The mason jar, labeled Suspicious, the 14th of April, sat heavy in my apron pocket, its contents a silent witness to Tommy's betrayal. The pain of his letter still stung, but I'd turned it into fuel, a fire that sharpened my mind. Morning light spilled through the kitchen window of my Savannah home, painting the oak floors gold, but the air felt heavy, like the calm before a hurricane. I wasn't drowning in grief anymore, honey. I was plotting, my roots digging deeper into the Georgia soil I'd sworn to protect. Tommy thought he was playing a frail old widow, but I'd been tending this land for decades, pulling weeds before they choked the roses. He was about to learn his mother wasn't just a gardener, she was a strategist. I started small, deliberate, like setting a trap for a fox. Tommy, you're right, I said at breakfast, my voice trembling just enough to sell the act. He looked up from his coffee, his hazel eyes narrowing slightly. This house is too much for me now. Maybe we should look at those papers you mentioned. His face lit up, a grin spreading like kudzu over a fence. That's smart, Ma, he said, too quick, too eager. I'll call my guy today. Get things moving. I nodded, stirring my oatmeal, my hands steady beneath the table. You're so good to me, I murmured, letting my eyes drift to the window, as if lost in thought. But my mind was a steel trap, and Tommy was already caught in it. I called Clara, my old friend from the bank, while Tommy was out checking the mailbox. Her voice crackled through the landline, sharp as ever. Margaret, you sure about this? She asked when I told her about the insurance policy and the tea. Bring that jar over, she said. I've got a contact who can test it, and I'll run that lawyer's name Carl Dixon through some old banking records. Clara had a nose for trouble, honed from years spotting fraud at the First Savannah Bank. I drove the 3 miles to her house, the jar hidden in my purse, and handed it over. She held it to the light, her lips tight. If there's anything in this, we'll know by tomorrow, she said. You keep playing along, Margaret. Don't let him suspect a thing. Back home, I set the next piece of my plan in motion. I pulled out Henry's old filing cabinet, its drawers squeaking like they were protesting the secrets inside. I crafted a fake document, a deed transfer, written on official-looking paper from the county office, filled with nonsense about land rights but convincing enough to fool Tommy's greedy eyes. I left it on the coffee table, slightly askew, as if I'd forgotten it there. When Tommy came back, his boots thudding on the porch, he spotted it immediately. "What's this, Ma?" he asked, picking it up, his voice casual but his fingers twitching. "Oh, just some old papers," I said, waving a hand, my voice airy. "I'm trying to get organized." He scanned the page, his grin returning, thinking he'd won the jackpot. That night, I turned on Henry's recorder again, hiding it behind a photo of us at Tybee Island, back when Tommy still called me Mama without a motive. I caught him on the phone with Carl, his voice low in the den. "She's ready to sign," he whispered. "Thinks it's her idea. The tea's keeping her foggy. We'll have the deed by next week." Foggy? Honey? The only fog was in his head. I wasn't drinking his poison, I was pouring it into jars, building a case. I checked the recorder, its tape whirring softly, capturing every word. I wrote down the time, 8:47 p.m. in my journal, next to Carl's number and the lawyer's receipt. Every move Tommy made was a thread I was weaving into a net. The next morning, Clara called. "Margaret, that tea?" "Low-dose sedative. Enough to make you drowsy, confused if you kept drinking it." My stomach twisted, but I wasn't surprised. "And Carl Dixon?" I asked. "Shady lawyer," she said. "Known for forging signatures on estate deals. He's bad news." I thanked her, my voice calm. But inside, my resolve hardened like the oak trees outside. Tommy thought he was 3 steps ahead, but I was already circling back. I'd let him think he was winning, let him bring his papers, his lies. But honey, when you play chess with a woman who's buried a husband and raised a son alone, you'd better know the board. Here's how I set the stage for the showdown. The air in my Savannah kitchen was thick with the scent of roasted pecans and betrayal. The table set for a dinner that was more trap than celebration. I'd played my part for days, letting Tommy think I was a frail old widow, softened by his lies and that poisoned tea. But tonight, honey, the mask was coming off. The oak trees outside swayed in the Georgia dusk, their mossy fingers brushing the windows like they knew a storm was brewing. I'd invited Clara and Walter, my lawyer of 30 years, to join us. Tommy didn't know it, but the net I'd woven was tightening, and he was about to feel its pull. The dining room glowed under the chandelier, its light catching the blue cornflower china Henry gave me decades ago. Every detail was deliberate, down to the linen napkins folded like promises I'd never break. Tommy sat across from me, his hazel eyes glinting with confidence as he carved the roast, acting the dutiful son. "This looks amazing, Ma," he said, his smile as slick as the Savannah River at low tide. Clara, in her plum cardigan, sipped her iced tea, her gaze sharp as a hawk's. Walter, with his pressed suit and steady hands, nodded politely, but I caught the glint in his eye. He knew what was coming. We ate, the clink of silverware filling the silence, until I set down my fork, my voice cutting through the room like a blade. "I've made a decision," I said, folding my hands. Tommy leaned forward, his fork hovering. "About the house." His grin widened, thinking he'd won. "That's great, Ma. Time to simplify things, right?" I let the moment hang, the chandelier's light flickering like my resolve never would. "Not quite," I said, my voice low but firm. "I'm not selling. I'm giving it away." His face froze, the fork clattering to his plate. "Giving it away?" he sputtered, his voice cracking like thin ice. "To who?" I met his gaze, steady as the oaks outside. "The Savannah Land Trust. In Henry's name. To keep this land wild, untouched by greed." The room went still, the air heavy with the weight of truth. Clara coughed softly, hiding a smile behind her napkin. Walter pulled a folder from his briefcase, its pages crisp with intent. "It's already drafted," he said, sliding it across the table. "Margaret signed it this morning, notarized." Tommy's eyes darted to the papers, his hands trembling not from age, but from fury. "You can't do this," he snapped, his voice rising. This is my inheritance. I leaned forward, my voice cold as a winter marsh. Your inheritance? You mean the land you plan to sell out from under me? The life you insured for $2 million without my signature? His face drained of color, his mouth opening and closing like a fish on a dock. I reached into my apron pocket and placed a small USB drive on the table, its black casing glinting like a bullet. What's that? Tommy asked, his voice hoarse. Your words, I said softly. Every call to Carl Dixon. Every plan to make me look confused. To forge my name. To steal what Henry and I built. I tapped the drive, my arthritic fingers steady. You thought I was slipping, Tommy. But I've been listening. Recording. Waiting. Clara's eyes gleamed with pride, while Walter's pen hovered over his notepad, ready to seal Tommy's fate. You're crazy, Tommy stammered, shoving back his chair, the legs scraping the pine floor. You can't prove anything. But his voice shook, betraying him. I stood, my 5'2" frame towering in spirit. I don't need to prove it to you, I said, my words cutting like a scythe. Clara's contact tested that tea you kept pushing. Sedatives, Tommy, enough to make me drowsy, pliable, just like you wanted. His eyes widened, wild now, like a cornered animal. Ma, I was just trying to help, he lied, his voice cracking under the weight of his own deceit. The chandelier flickered, casting shadows across his face, revealing the stranger my son had become. Help? I said, my voice rising for the first time. You helped yourself to my life, my home, my trust. I pointed to the USB drive. That's going to the police, Tommy, along with the forged insurance policy and your lawyer's receipt. He lunged for the drive, but Clara was faster, snatching it up. Not so fast, she said, her voice sharp as a switch. Tommy froze, his hands clenched, his breath ragged. I sat back, my heart pounding but my resolve unbroken. This wasn't the end, honey. He'd fight back, desperate and sloppy, and I was ready for it. Here's how his desperation unraveled. The dining room in my Savannah home was a battlefield now, the air crackling with the aftermath of truth. The chandelier's glow cast jagged shadows across Tommy's face, his hazel eyes wild with panic as the USB drive sat in Clara's hand, a tiny grenade ready to blow his schemes apart. My words still hung in the air, sharp as a Georgia summer storm. That's going to the police, Tommy. He stood frozen, his chair tipped back, the spilled wine staining the tablecloth like blood on a butcher's block. I'd played the frail widow long enough, honey, and now the curtain was up. Tommy thought he could outsmart me, but he forgot who taught him to play chess on this very table, back when he still called me Mama with love in his voice. You're bluffing, Tommy spat, his voice a snarl, his hands gripping the table's edge. You wouldn't turn on your own son, his words stung, but I held my ground, my 5'2" frame unyielding. You turned on me first, I said, my voice low, cutting like a blade through marsh grass. You forged my name, drugged my tea, planned to sell my home. What kind of son does that? Clara stepped forward, her plum cardigan catching the light, the USB drive now tucked safely in her purse. She's got everything, Tommy, she said, her tone cold as a January night. Recordings, receipts, test results. You're done. Walter, calm as ever, adjusted his glasses, the notarized papers for the Savannah Land Trust still open on the table, a silent testament to my victory. Tommy's face twisted, a mix of rage and desperation, like a cornered coyote. You think you've won? He shouted, lunging toward the door. I'm not going down like this. He grabbed my car keys from the counter, the ones for Henry's old pickup, parked 5 feet from the porch. I didn't flinch. I knew something he didn't. Last night, after Clara's call about the sedative, I'd checked the truck. Under the hood, I found the brake line sliced clean, not frayed or rusted a deliberate cut, meant to send me careening down the winding roads of Savannah's outskirts. My heart had pounded then, but now, it was steady as the oak trees outside. Tommy, stop, I said, my voice sharp enough to halt him mid-step. He turned, keys dangling in his hand, his breath ragged. You think you can run? After what you did to my truck? His eyes widened, a flicker of fear breaking through his bravado. What are you talking about? He stammered. But his voice betrayed him, quivering like the marsh reeds in a storm. The brake line, I said, stepping closer, my eyes locked on his. Cut clean. You thought I'd drive it, didn't you? Crash somewhere on those back roads, make it look like an accident? His mouth opened, but no words came. The room was silent, save for the tick of Henry's old clock, counting down the seconds of his unraveling. Clara dialed her phone, her fingers swift. Bennett, it's time, she said, her voice steady. Within minutes, the crunch of gravel announced the arrival of Detective Bennett, a tall man with a wood smoke scent and a badge that gleamed under the porch light. Tommy bolted for the back door, but Walter, quicker than his 60 years suggested, blocked the way. Don't make this harder, Walter said, his voice calm but firm. Tommy spun back, his face a mask of fury. You set me up, he screamed at me, his finger jabbing the air. You're my mother. You're supposed to protect me. The words hit like a slap, but I didn't waver. I protected you for years, I said, my voice breaking despite my resolve. But you chose money over me. Detective Bennett stepped inside, his presence filling the room like a storm cloud. Thomas Dawson, he said, his tone even. You need to come with me. Tommy's hands shook as he backed against the wall, the keys clattering to the floor. Ma, please, he whispered, his voice small now, like the boy who once cried over a skinned knee. But that boy was gone, buried under years of greed. Bennett cuffed him, the metal clicking like a lock on a cage. Clara touched my arm, her eyes soft but fierce. You did what you had to, she murmured. I nodded, my throat tight, the weight of my son's betrayal heavier than ever. As Bennett led Tommy out, his boots dragging on my pine floors, I stood by the window, watching the taillights fade into the Georgia night. The oaks outside stood silent, witnesses to a mother's justice. But this wasn't over, honey. Tommy's desperation had shown his hand, but I knew he'd left one last card to play. Here's how I sealed his fate for good. The echo of Detective Bennett's car faded into the Savannah night, taking Tommy with it, his hands cuffed, his schemes shattered like glass on my pine floors. The dining room stood silent, the blue cornflower china still on the table, stained with the remnants of a meal that marked the end of a son's betrayal. The oaks outside swayed in the moonlight, their mossy branches whispering secrets only I could hear. I stood by the window, my heart heavy but unbroken, the weight of Tommy's actions settling like dust after a storm. I'd won, honey, but victory tasted bitter, like the tea I'd poured into jars instead of drinking. This house, these 8 acres of Georgia soil, they were mine, but they carried too many ghosts now, Henry's, Tommy's, and the mother I thought I'd been. I moved through the house, my steps slow but sure, each creak of the floorboards a reminder of the life I'd built. Clara and Walter had stayed late, their voices soft as they offered to help clean up. You don't have to leave, Margaret, Clara said, her hand warm on my shoulder, her plum cardigan catching the lamplight. This is your home. I smiled, my eyes tracing the familiar lines of Henry's rocking chair, still by the window. It was, I said, my voice steady. But home's more than wood and nails. It's where you're free. Walter nodded, his lawyer's calm masking the respect in his eyes. The land trust papers are filed, he said. The forest is safe. Henry would be proud. I touched the chair's armrest, feeling Henry's presence in its worn grain. He is, I whispered. I packed a small suitcase, just enough for a new start, some clothes, Henry's old seed journal, and the photo of us at Tybee Island, Tommy's smile still bright in that frozen moment. The mason jar, the USB drive, the recorder I left them with Clara, evidence for Bennett's case. Tommy's bag sat untouched by the door, his boots still caked with mud. He'd thought he'd claimed this house, but he'd forgotten who raised him to fight for what's theirs. I walked to the porch, the air thick with the scent of marsh and magnolia, and climbed into Henry's old pickup, the one Tommy hadn't dared touch after his brake line stunt. The engine roared to life, steady as my resolve, and I drove the 5 miles to a small riverside cottage I'd bought years ago, a secret kept even from Henry. It sat on the banks of the Savannah River, its white clapboard walls glowing under the stars. I stepped onto the cottage porch, the river's current murmuring like an old friend. The air was cool, carrying the tang of salt and earth, and I set my suitcase down, feeling lighter than I had in years. "You did what you had to, Margaret," I said to myself, my voice soft against the night. I brewed a cup of chamomile tea, real tea, no poison, and sat in a wicker chair, watching the river reflect the moon. Tommy was gone, facing the consequences of his greed, but I wasn't running from him. I was running towards something new. This cottage, this river, this moment, they were mine, untainted by betrayal. I'd left a note for Clara on the kitchen table, tucked beside the cornflower teacup Tommy had used. "The house belongs to the forest now. I'm starting over. Keep an eye on things." No. The stars blinked above, and I thought of Henry, his voice echoing in my mind. "You're tougher than the toughest oak, Margaret." I smiled, sipping my tea, its warmth spreading through me like a promise kept. Tommy had underestimated me, thought age had dulled my edges. But I'd shown him what a mother's strength could do. I wasn't just reclaiming my life. I was rewriting it, on my terms, in a place where the past couldn't hold me. The river flowed on, steady and sure, and I knew I'd sleep soundly tonight, free from the weight of a son who'd chosen money over love. But honey, freedom comes with a price, and I'd paid it in full. Here's what I learned, and what I want you to carry with you. The Savannah River flowed steady outside my new cottage, its waters catching the first light of dawn, whispering truths I'd fought to learn. I sat on the wicker chair, my hands wrapped around a mug of chamomile tea, the kind that warms your soul without hiding poison. The air was crisp, scented with marsh grass and freedom, and I felt at peace, hard-won, like a garden reclaimed from weeds. Tommy's betrayal had cut me deeper than any knife, honey, but it didn't break me. It taught me. At 76, I've learned that age isn't a cage. It's a crown, forged from every loss, every fight, every moment you choose to stand tall. My son thought he could cash in my life for a paycheck, but he forgot who raised him. I'm Margaret Elaine Dawson, widow, gardener, survivor, and I've got a few lessons for you, especially if you're carrying the weight of years like I am. First, trust your instincts, that knot in your gut when something feels off. It's not just nerves, it's wisdom, whispering warnings louder than any storm. I felt it when Tommy handed me that tea, his smile too slick, his eyes too cold. I didn't drink it, and you shouldn't swallow lies either. Second, protect what's yours, your home, your heart, your legacy. Tommy thought my 8 acres of Georgia soil were his to sell, but I gave them to the Savannah Land Trust, keeping Henry's dream alive. You've built something too, whether it's a house, a family, or a quiet kind of courage. Guard it fiercely. Third, know you're never alone, even when the world feels empty. Clara, Walter, even Detective Bennett, they were my strength when Tommy turned his back. Find your people, the ones who'll stand with you when the river runs rough. Most important, don't let age fool you into thinking you're done. These gray hairs, these arthritic hands, they're proof of battles won, not lost. I outsmarted my own son, not with force, but with the kind of cunning that comes from decades of living. You've got that too, honey. Use it. Start over if you need to, like I did, driving Henry's old pickup to this riverside cottage, 5 miles from the life I left behind. The past doesn't own you, it shapes you. And if a 6-year-old widow can walk away from betrayal to find peace, so can you. I'm sharing this story because someone out there needs it, maybe you. Maybe a friend who's facing their own kind of poison. If my words touched you, drop a like on this video, leave a comment with your thoughts, or share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you want more stories like mine, where the underdog rises with grit and grace, hit that subscribe button for the Unwanted Revenge. It's not just a channel, honey. It's a reminder that we're stronger than they think. I'm Margaret, and I'm still here, sipping tea by the river, writing my next chapter. Let's write yours together.